Hey guys, welcome back to more pro-revenge Reddit stories. In this Ripestories video, never pick a fight with a guy who owns 15 acres of agricultural farmland. My HOA tried to fine me $1,000 for having a few chickens on property outside of their jurisdiction. They pushed me way too far, and in return, I hatched a plan and got the ultimate payback. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled Grandpa and the Fuel Thief. So my grandpa was a farmer and he lived in a small town, and from the stories I've heard was a generous, strong and stand-up man of few words. He did not boast or call people out. That's not to say he allowed anyone to walk over him, but he did not go for big confrontations. He was smarter in that and knew that you often lose as much as you gain in confrontations. This was especially true in small farm towns where everyone depends on one another. He kept tanks of both diesel and gasoline on his farm. He noticed that over the course of several weeks his gasoline level was dropping faster than his usage. One of his neighbors must have been pulling up at night and stealing one tank of gas at a time. He was more amused than angry, and on the next fill-up he quietly asked the fuel truck driver to swap the tanks. Well, not a week later, just after dawn, he was driving his tractor along the main road to his second field and he came across a neighbor having car trouble. As he got down to help, he smiled, having an idea what was amiss. He pulled the gas cap and noted that the fuel smelled like diesel. The man acted surprised. Grandpa chained the car up to his tractor and towed him home. The fuel thieving stopped on that day. No big deal was made. And yeah, Ripe Stars, that was a textbook perfect example of petty revenge. Props to this legendary grandpa. And by the way, if you enjoy the revenge stories, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and post some star emojis in the comments if you want to help me with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much. The next one is titled HOA fined me for farming, unaware I own the unused farmland outside their neighborhood. So a bit of background first. I bought my house in what I thought was a pretty normal suburban neighborhood about 6 years back. The place came as part of a weird property deal where the previous owner had bundled a few parcels together. My actual house is inside this HOA community that I will call Suburban Hell Estates, but I also ended up with this separate chunk of land that sits just outside the HOA boundaries, about 15 acres of nothing really. It's literally across the road from the back fence line of the neighborhood, separated by a county road that barely anyone uses. For the first few years I didn't do much with it, the land just sat there getting overgrown. I would mow it maybe twice a year to keep the county off my back about weed ordinances, but that was really all about it. A couple of neighbors had asked if it was for sale over the years, but I never seriously considered selling. I paid the property taxes on it, and that was the extent of my involvement. My wife and I would joke about maybe doing something with it someday, but really, it was not a priority. I mean, we were busy with our actual house and jobs and life, you know. But then about a year and a half ago, I got really into gardening. I started watching a bunch of videos about homesteading and sustainable living, and I thought, hey, I've got this land doing nothing. Why not use it? So I started small. I put in a decent-sized vegetable garden, built a little chicken coop. Just kidding, it's coop, of course, for maybe 8 hens, got a couple of goats because they are great for clearing brush, and my wife thought they were cute. It was honestly therapeutic. I would usually go there after work, tend to the plants, collect eggs, and hang out with the goats. The chickens were surprisingly quiet, and the goats only made noise when they wanted food. It was just perfect. But then I got the first letter. It showed up in my mailbox on a Tuesday, and the letter informed me that I was in violation of the CC&Rs regarding agricultural activities and livestock within community boundaries, and that I was being fined $250. It also stated that I needed to remove all animals and farming operations within 30 days or face additional fines. I read it 3 times because I genuinely thought it was a joke. My wife read it over my shoulder and said, "Are they serious? Your chickens are not even in the HOA. Apparently they think they can find me anyway." I said, "That's insane, just ignore it." I probably should have listened to her. Instead, I called the HOA office and got transferred to the property manager, who very sternly told me that complaints had been filed and that the board took community standards very seriously and that farming was prohibited in the HOA. I tried to explain that my land was not even part of the HOA, but she cut me off and said the fines would continue to accumulate if I did not comply. Then she hung up on me, so I did what any reasonable person would do. I pulled out my property documents and confirmed what I already knew, that farmland has its own parcel, its own deed, and zero connection to the HOA. It wasn't even close. The HOA boundary literally stops at their back fence, and my farm is across a public county road on land that was never part of their development. So I wrote a polite letter back explaining all of this, attached copies of the parcel maps and my deed, and figured that would be the end of it. But it wasn't the end of it. 2 weeks later I got another letter. This one was even more aggressive. This time it claimed that properties adjacent to or visible from the community fell under their purview if they negatively impacted property values or community aesthetics. The fine had also increased to $500, and they were threatening to send it to collections and pursue all available legal remedies. I knew this was basically an empty threat since the property was not in their HOA, but the aggressive tone told me that they were not just gonna drop this. That's when I met the HOA president in person. Picture the most stereotypical HOA board president you can imagine, and then make her about 20% more intense. She showed up at my house on a Saturday morning with 2 other board members in tow. I was in my driveway washing my truck when they pulled up. "We need to talk about your little farm project," she said before even introducing herself. I turned off the hose. "Okay, and you are?" "HOA president. I think you've received our letters." "I have. And I've explained that the land is not in the HOA." She actually laughed at me. "Do you think we are stupid? That land is right there." She pointed towards the back of the neighborhood like that proved something. "Everyone can see it from their yards. The smell from those animals is unacceptable." 8 chickens and 2 goats don't smell, I said. And regardless, it's not your property, and it's not even in your HOA. "It affects our property values," one of the other board members chimed in. "We have standards here." "Then you should be happy that I'm maintaining the land instead of letting it turn into a total mess," I said. The president stepped closer, and I could see she was the type who was not used to people pushing back. "Let me be very clear here. You will remove those animals and cease all agricultural activities, or else we will take legal action. We will put a lien on your house if we have to. Don't test us." I'm generally a pretty calm person, but being threatened on my own driveway by someone with zero authority over me was crossing a line. "You know what? Do whatever you want, but you're wasting your time and probably your money." She smiled in this really condescending way. "We will see about that." My wife was watching from the front door. After they left, she came out and said, "They're not gonna let this go, are they?" "Doesn't look like it." "What are you gonna do?" "Well, I don't know yet, but I'm not getting rid of the chickens." So after they left, I was pretty annoyed. Something was bugging me about the whole thing. Why were they so aggressive about this? It seemed personal, not just about rules, so I did some digging and I talked to a few longtime neighbors, checked out some old county records online, made a few calls, and it turns out about 8 years ago, the HOA board had tried to buy that exact parcel of farmland from the previous owner. They wanted to turn it into a community green space or maybe a little park or something they could brag about to boost property values. The deal fell through because they lowballed the owner and he refused to sell. The HOA was apparently pretty bitter about it, so this was not really about my chickens or my garden. This was about them being mad that someone else owned land they wanted and felt entitled to control. That is when I started getting creative. I spent a few days researching agricultural laws in our state, and it turns out we have pretty strong right to farm protections. Basically, if your land is zoned agricultural and you're using it for legitimate farming purposes, you're protected from nuisance complaints, even if someone does not like the noise or smell. I double-checked with the county, and yep, my parcel was zoned agricultural, always had been actually, and then I started thinking about what kind of farming operation would be most educational for my HOA neighbors. And yeah guys, before I continue reading, what would be the thing that annoys an HOA the most about farming? Think about it for a minute and then let's continue with the video. So anyway, I grew up in a rural area and my uncle ran a hog farm for years. Hogs are profitable and they are completely legal on agricultural land, and they have one very specific characteristic that I remembered quite well. They smell. Not just a little bit, we're talking about a smell that can carry on for quite a distance on a warm day with the right wind. So I called my uncle, and he had since retired but still had connections in the industry. I asked him about the feasibility of running a commercial hog operation on my land. He thought it was a great idea, especially since there was good demand for locally raised pork. He connected me with a guy who was looking to expand his operation and would basically run the whole thing in exchange for splitting the profits. Then I checked the zoning laws 3 more times to make absolutely sure I was in the clear, and yeah, it was agricultural land, agricultural use, right to farm protections. In short, I was golden. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning except my wife. When I finally explained it to her, she was quiet for a minute and then said, "You're really gonna do this? I mean, they threatened to put a lien on our house over 8 chickens that are not even on their property, so yeah, I'm really gonna do this." She laughed, shook her head and said, "Well, I cannot say they didn't ask for it." The hog farmer I partnered with was great. His name was Bill and he had been in the business for over 20 years. Efficient, professional, and knew all the regulations inside and out. We started with about 120 hogs initially, with plans to expand to over 200 within the year. Bill explained that a commercial operation of this scale would be considered mid to large size for an independent farm, which was really perfect for what I needed. He built proper pens, set up feeding systems, waste management. The whole operation was completely by the book and properly permitted through the county agricultural extension office. The smell took about a week to really develop. Hogs need time to, well, produce enough waste to create that signature aroma, but once it got going, it was just glorious. The farmland sits on a slight elevation compared to the HOA neighborhood, and the prevailing wind in our area blows from west to east. My farm is to the west and you can probably see where this is going. On warm days that smell would just roll right over the neighborhood. Not constantly, but enough that you would notice, enough that if you were showing your house to potential buyers, they would probably comment on it. I got another letter from the HOA about 2 weeks after the hogs arrived. This one was just sputtering rage, barely contained in formal language. They demand that I remove the offensive livestock operation immediately, and the fine was up to $1,000 now, which would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. I wrote back with a very polite letter explaining that I was engaged in legitimate agricultural activities on properly zoned agricultural land, that I was in full compliance with all county and state regulations, including right to farm statutes, and that they had no legal authority over my property. I might have also attached a copy of the state agricultural protection laws just to be educational, and the HOA president showed up at my house again about 3 days after I sent that letter, this time alone and absolutely furious. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she shouted from my driveway. I walked out and said, "Running a farm on my farmland." "You know exactly what you're doing. This is retaliation." "This is agriculture," I said, "protected by state law. Maybe you should check with a lawyer before you keep threatening me. You're ruining everyone's property values." "That sounds like a you problem. Maybe you shouldn't try to fine me for chickens on property you don't control." Her face was red. "You smug little. We will bury you in legal fees. We will make your life hell." "You tried that already," I said. "Didn't work. Now I'm just using my property the way I'm legally allowed to. If you don't like it, maybe you should have thought twice before harassing me." She actually stomped her foot, a grown woman probably in her 50s stomping her foot on my driveway like a toddler. "This is not over." "I think it is," I said. She left and I thought that was the end of the direct confrontations, but about a month after the hogs were fully operational, she tried one more time. She caught me at my mailbox one evening and her whole demeanor had changed. She was not trying to sound reasonable. "I want to make you an offer," she said. "The HOA is willing to compensate you for the inconvenience if you agree to scale back to just chickens and goats." "How much?" I asked, curious where this was going. $5,000. I actually laughed at her. "You tried to fine me $1,000 for having chickens. Now you want to pay me $5,000 to get rid of the pigs? That's not even close to what I would lose in profit over the next few years." "Then name your price." "There is not one," I said. "You wanted to play hardball over my 8 chickens and you threatened me with liens and collections. You came to my house multiple times to intimidate me and now you're dealing with the consequences." Her fake pleasant expression dropped immediately. "You're doing this just to spite us." "No, I'm doing this because it's profitable and completely legal. The spite is just a bonus." Damn guys, OP is an absolute legend. She stared at me for a long moment and I could see her trying to figure out if there was any angle left to play. Finally, she just said, "You're gonna regret this." "I really don't think I will," I said. She hasn't tried to talk to me since then, but the fallout has been absolutely spectacular. See, suburban hell estates always prided itself on being this upscale community with great property values. People paid a premium to live there because it was clean, quiet, and exclusive. The HOA fees were high but supposedly worth it for the maintained common areas and strict standards. Then suddenly there's a working hog farm with over 100 pigs right next door. I started hearing things through people I knew in the neighborhood. Houses that had been listed for sale were sitting longer. A couple of deals fell through because buyers came for showings on warm days and noticed the smell. One guy I know who lives 3 streets over told me his realtor had to start scheduling showings for early morning or late evening to try to avoid the worst of it. People were complaining at HOA meetings about the horrible odor, but there was nothing the board could do about it. According to someone who went to one of the meetings, the president had to stand up and explain that the farm was completely legal and there was no mechanism to stop it. Apparently, people were not happy with that answer. The best part, a few families who had been on the fence about moving decided to go ahead and list their houses, which increased supply right as demand was dropping. Basic economics. Property values did not crash or anything dramatic, but they definitely took a hit. I heard estimates ranging from 5 to 10% drops depending on how close you were to the back fence line. One of my actual neighbors who lives on my street inside the HOA and always thought the whole situation was funny, told me that at one meeting someone asked why the board couldn't just buy the farmland and shut down the hog operation. The president apparently had to explain that they tried to buy it years ago and failed, and now it would cost way more than they could possibly afford, and they did not have that kind of money in the reserve fund. Someone else apparently said, well, maybe we shouldn't have started a fight with someone who owns a farm. According to my neighbor, the meeting went downhill from there. There was talk about recalling the board, accusations about mismanagement, and the whole thing turned into a mess. I've kept the hog operation going for about 7 months now. It's actually turning a decent profit, which is a nice bonus. Bill handles all the daily operations and selling, and we split everything 60-40 after expenses since he's doing the actual work. I'm clearing a nice amount of cash monthly without having to do much except sign off on the permits and letting him use the land. Better than it sitting empty collecting weeds. The HOA has gone completely quiet on their end, and they even stopped sending me letters after that last confrontation. I'm pretty sure they finally consulted with an actual lawyer who told them they had no case and would just rack up legal fees for nothing. Or maybe they just realized that every action they took made things even worse for themselves, and if anyone from the suburban hell estates HOA board is reading this, you could have just left me alone, you could have let me have my little garden and my chickens in peace, but you had to push it. You had to threaten and fine and act like you had power you didn't actually have, so enjoy the smell. I hear it's particularly strong this time of year when the weather warms up, and from what Bill tells me, summer is when it gets really going. Maybe next time you will think twice before you try to bully someone over livestock that is not even on your property. And yeah guys, in my opinion, those hogs smell like absolute victory. Also, this HOA was clearly suffering from something I would call imaginary boundary syndrome. And by the way, it seems like a lot of HOA presidents suffer from that. Enforcing stupid CC&Rs on a completely separate parcel that is not part of the HOA will just never get old. These HOAs simply never learn. And yeah, even though OP's revenge was quite brutal actually, the HOA president got exactly what she deserved. If you are such a power-tripping little dictator, you don't deserve any better. Now let's read some unhinged Reddit comments. The first one goes like this. Everyone sucks here. The HOA started all of this, but you escalated it way beyond the original problem. Don't get me wrong, the board was clearly in the wrong. They had no authority over land outside their boundary, and threatening liens and collections over property they don't control is just ridiculous, and the HOA president deserved to be humbled. However, the regular homeowners who had nothing to do with those letters are now stuck living next to the fallout. Well guys, I would say that is what you call collateral damage. Another Reddit comment said, not the a-hole OP, they played stupid games with land they didn't own and finally learned what property rights mean. Also, the funniest part here is that they accidentally upgraded your hobby farm into a legitimate business. The neighbors should be mad at the board that started this, not you. You used your property within the law. And guys, last we will read one of these absolutely unhinged Reddit comments. I know you love them, or at least I do. And it goes like this. This one is calling OP out for being a total a-hole. It goes like this. So look, the HOA was absolutely annoying and out of line for pretending they controlled land they didn't own. Nobody is defending that, but your response was not standing up for yourself. Your response was absolute crazy revenge. That is just unhinged. unhinged. You did not just punish the HOA president, you punished families who probably had nothing to do with those letters, you punished people trying to sell their homes, you punished kids playing outside, people having barbecues, elderly trying to enjoy their yachts, and random homeowners who probably didn't even know the board was harassing you until the entire area started smelling like a county fair bathroom. Well, I will give it to that Redditor, he made a pretty funny comment. Anyway, the Redditor further said, "You're not some noble farmer defending your land, you literally researched the smelliest legal option possible and weaponized it against everyone nearby. You are a total but hilarious a-hole." And the next one is titled, "Oh, you can you? We will see about that," posted on r/pettyrevenge. About 7 years ago, I rented a bedroom in a large shared apartment with strangers. The landlady didn't seem to care about camaraderie of the tenants, but rather that she was just making money. Shocking, I know. Fast forward a few months of comfortable living and we get a new roommate, and from the moment I met him I knew he was a piece of work. This guy never did any tidying around the house, and he would hoard my dishes in his room for weeks on end and would refuse to give them back. He would smoke in his room and in the mornings and have a coughing fit in the bathroom for half an hour every damn day. The bathroom was next to my bedroom, so I had the misfortune of hearing it loud and clear. He threw up once in the sink after a night of drinking, oh yeah, real tough guy, and never cleaned it up. He would leave his bedroom window open in the middle of winter, which caused freezing cold air to fill the apartment. I may have slept through it had the freezing air not frozen my nipples into a nip cube. He would steal our groceries from the cupboard and fridge and outright deny it, and he would barely bathe, so he smelled bad, and when he did, he would use our items in the shower. And perhaps the worst, he spewed so much BS that his breath literally smelled like poop, like picked up a turd and savored it. Anyway, one night I'm relaxing in the living room and watching some restaurant show or something, and the chef was pureeing habanero peppers while wearing a protective head-to-toe suit. This putrid human that I share a residence with came in, sat down, and was all puffed up and said, "This guy's a pussy. I can eat those things like an apple, no problem." Oh really, you can you? I mentioned that they are well over 100 times hotter than a jalapeno, so he scoffs at me and reassures me over and over that he can. He does it all the time, and this was the millionth piece of BS I'd been served, so I was done with it. As luck would have it, a couple days later while shopping at a farmer's market, I came across a vendor who was selling habaneros. The table began to glow and birds sang in harmony as my revenge plot came to fruition. I bought a handful, took them home, and patiently waited until Buttnut opened his face again to sing his final words of BS before being served with a slice of extremely spicy humble pie. I gave one to him and told him I saw them and knew that he liked them so much, so I couldn't resist doing something nice. The look of terror in his eyes would have been enough to soothe my itch for revenge, however, he was not gonna go down without a fight. I will give him an ounce of credit actually, he's got more balls than brains, so he ate it whole thing in one bite, chomping, chewing, sweating, crying. For the next 45 minutes he cried under the kitchen tap with water pouring over his face. I asked him if he was done BSing me and the housemates, and through his cries he mumbled the most honest I've ever heard. Ah, peace at last. And the next one is a petty revenge story, which is titled Sweet and Salty Revenge. So this happened in 2004 and I still laugh about it now. My parents split up in 2000 and by 2004 both of them had new relationships and things were going okay. Back then my mom was living with her boyfriend, the farmer, a couple hundred miles away on a farm until she got sick and had to spend time in the hospital. While she was away, the farmer decided to have an affair with a neighbor. Mom found out and ended the relationship when she got out of the hospital. Me and a family friend drive up in a van to help her move out and leave the dick farmer behind. Understandably, I was pissed about what this guy did, but my mom would not let me exact any real revenge and the farmer was hiding somewhere when we arrived. So while we were packing her stuff, I'm thinking of how to get back at this guy without mom finding out. I ended up in the bathroom where I noticed this guy's aftershave, 3 little bottles from some gift set, all half full, so I know he uses them. I proceeded to empty each bottle and grabbed one of those little funnels you get in a travel set. You might guess what's coming. I then filled each bottle about halfway with my own fragrance. See, pee. It was not easy though, pee everywhere. I cleaned up, put them back where they were. I then took the plugs to his bath and sinks, wrapped them in newspaper and packed them up with mom's knickknacks. We finished packing the van and then leave. They did not have a shower, so this guy would have no way to wash properly after splashing pee all over himself. Let's see if his new woman wants him now. And yeah guys, as the British say, OP is literally taking the piss. You could also say OP got pissed off and the dick farmer got pissed on. Anyway, thank you for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.